It's an International. It's a 2016. The truck's pretty well loaded.
It's a fully loaded, secure armored truck that used to haul all of the money paid by Massachusetts commuters riding the T. Just one of 10 that hit the road each day until the MBTA privatized its cash collection money room operations and farmed it out to Brinks, making these trucks obsolete. That deal meant the trucks landed on the auction block in a move where 5 Investigates discovered they sold at rock bottom prices.
The MBTA is in a fiscal crisis, and that's the backdrop. Every dollar counts.
According to the bid documents we obtained, those money room trucks sold for pennies on the dollar. The T accepted the highest bid, all 10 trucks, for a total of only $87,000, even though they originally shelled out more than $1 million over the years.
Proof positive that they did a horrendous job with this auction.
Greg Sullivan is the former Inspector General and Research Director for the Pioneer Institute.
They should have put a minimum bid, which they didn't do.
Under state law, Chapter 30B, city and town governments are allowed to set minimum bids when they go to auction, but that law doesn't apply to the T. The MBTA's policies and procedures say nothing about setting minimum bids, but the bid documents we obtained show the T reserves the right to accept or reject the bids. Records show they took the biggest financial hit on 2 2016 trucks that were in excellent condition. They cost taxpayers $389,000, but sold at auction for only $20,000 each.
They should correct the problem going forward. It should be job one to save the taxpayers' money when you're selling something like this.
And because of our reporting, the MBTA now says it's considering the use of minimum bids in future auctions. A spokesman says the T is currently reviewing whether there's a more cost-effective way to offload surplus items. Kathy Curran, 5 Investigates.